Easy to forget. All right, just for the record, I started the meeting at 5:02 p.m. We did brief introductions, and we are now on agenda item 2 for election of budget committee chair and vice chair. There was a nomination for Daryl and a nomination for Jeremy as budget committee chair. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I move to close the nominations and move to a vote.
Okay. All right. Daryl, let's start with you. Who would you like to vote for?
Jeremy.
Okay. Laura?
Jeremy.
Okay. Jeremy?
Daryl.
All right. Tamara?
Jeremy.
Okay.
I'm
And Sabine.
confused. Are we not voting for chair and vice chair at the same time?
So we'll do chair first and then we'll do
Oh,
vice chair.
okay.
I
So-
apologize.
If everybody wants Jeremy, I'll vote for him.
Okay. Sounds good.
Except for Jeremy himself.
All right. So Jeremy is our board
Okay.
chair,
I'm following this now.
or sorry, not board chair, budget committee chair.
Budget committee.
Right before you came in, I nominated Daryl, who in turn nominated Jeremy. So we're assuming that's his preference. So that's why we're voting that way.
All right, is there a nomination for board, I'm sorry, I'm saying it again. Apparently it's the end of the day.
Budget.
Budget committee chair or vice chair.
I
Daryl.
nominate Daryl as the vice chair.
All right. Any other nominations? All right, can I get a motion? Can I get a motion?
Motion to like Daryl as vice chair.
Okay.
All right. Second?
Second.
Okay. And I'll vote for Daryl. All right. Or sorry, can you?
Unanimous
Yes.
consent.
Great, thank you.
Thank you,
All
guys.
right. Okay, Jeremy, I will let you to continue on to the meeting, and you'll just move us along to the different agenda items, and I can fill in the different spaces, and then for the next meeting, we'll have a little cheat sheet for you, like we did
Perfect.
last year.
Perfect. So I believe you are reading the budget message for fiscal year 2023-2024, correct?
I am. So I'll go ahead and take us into that. Did everybody get a chance to read the budget message?
Mhm.
Okay. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go over the big nuggets. And then if there's any questions that you have with me or have for me, then we can discuss that. Just the high level, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the different budget, and I'll go through the different items. Okay. So as you all are aware, the purpose of the budget message is to outline our forecasted expenditure requirements to meet the goals and proposed means for financing those requirements. Also provide a financial overview of the use and deployment of personnel, materials, and services, and capital for administrative and operating expenditures during the fiscal year. It also offers guidance to the board and district on overall operational priorities and expenditures. The first, I'd like to discuss the accomplishments of fiscal year 2023. This has been a super busy year, and I'm very proud of the team and all that we have accomplished. We are working on finalizing the Hood River County Transportation District Transit Master Plan update of 2023. And it is expected to be adopted at the May 17th board meeting. This planning process was very robust, and I am proud to say that our consultants did a great job of making it digestible, but also ensuring that hard to reach communities' voices were heard. So super excited about that. And the 4-agency Gorge Pass is in its second year, and the Gorge TransLink providers have made great strides to provide more consistent and service, but also more user-friendly connections, and ensuring that our policies align with each other rather than having 4 different policies for dog policy, kids, et cetera, et cetera. We've been really working hard to align those policies where we can. We are contracting with Community County and Forest Service to provide the Dog Mountain Shuttle for the 3rd year. That has kicked off on April 29th, and it's been going swimmingly. Lots of ridership.
Where did they park?
At the Skamania County Fairgrounds.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. We provided the Gorge to Mountain service in-house for the 2nd year. Ridership has close to tripled from the fiscal year 2022 season, from 2,902 riders to 7,910 riders in fiscal year 23, which is great to see. And I think it's kind of a precursor to what we might see this summer for seasonal ridership. Another great thing about that is we were able to work with the high school ski team to provide night services for them, but also for other users to get to the mountain at night so they could do the night skiing. We partnered with the City of Hood River on the Gorge Transit Connect Low Income Pass Program and Downtown Employee Pass Program for the 2nd year. Both of those programs have seen significant increase in clients. We purchased 2 new 14-passenger vehicles with 2 ADA securements and our first electric van.
Yay, I saw that. Yay.
So that's exciting. We worked with the Forest Service, ODOT, and other partners to ensure the success of the Multnomah Falls I-84 permit program and continuation of the program in summer of 2023. And we are doing that in a way where it isn't necessarily us staffing the permit, but we're actually working with them to contract the service to us, and then we're actually contracting it out to another organization. We have applied to the FTA low or no emission bus program, requesting over $6 million in grant funding to purchase electric vehicles, facility modification, and expansion, and other funding programs that have not yet been awarded. Ridership overall is trending to increase by 40% from fiscal year 2022. So that is also a pretty phenomenal number. So, again, that is trend, but it's not necessarily in the books, of course. So for overall economic outlook, I am very optimistic. I do think that we are now starting to get to the point where we're going to see less and less emergency funding available because of CARES. So because of that, we need to make sure that we are budgeting correctly for our services and that we are not relying on any emergency funding going forward. There was some that we will be seeing that is going to kind of trickle in from fiscal year 2023. But it's very important to me that as we're going forward, we just kind of don't even think that that's going to be a possibility. So, because we have the opportunity to apply for another round, but this will be the last funding. And we've taken this opportunity to apply for a lot of different grants. So I think there's a lot of balls that are in motion, and it's going to be really exciting to see all what happens. But we're really going to be focused on using our resources appropriately to implement the Transit Master Plan action items. So for this year, for the goal, for the board goals for 2024 budget year, we're really looking at how do we get ourselves prime and ready to start implementing those Transit Master Plan items. Of course, we want to maintain our current service levels for year-round service and the Gorge to Mountain Express, but also expand summer service on the Columbia Gorge Express to mitigate congestion and safety concerns along the I-84 corridor, and adding weekend service between Hood River and White Salmon Bingen during the busy summer months if funding is awarded. Again, those are all things that we have applied for. We're still waiting on final notice that we've been awarded it. It's fairly likely, or it's not fairly, but it's pretty likely that we'll receive the awarding for the Columbia Gorge Express and the Gorge to Mountain Express, but it isn't necessarily the approvals. We're expecting the approvals, I think, this week. So, but we have been told based on guidance to add it into our budget. Okay, so in addition to implementing the transit master plan update, we will also be updating the Hood River County Coordinated Transportation Plan, which we have to update every 3 years. The purpose of that plan is to simply make sure that our services and our outreach is holistic and reaching many different demographics, specifically low income, limited English proficiency, seniors and disabled individuals. That is a plan that we do in-house. I did it 3 years ago, and I have been working with ODOT on this. We can use the surveys that we received from and all the outreach that we did as part of the transit master plan, and we can use that to help update the coordinated transportation plan. Continue and grow the multi-provider Gorge Pass program and support the regional transit strategy and work toward improved connectivity throughout the Gorge. The Gorge Regional Transit Strategy is wrapping up, and with that, there's action items. So we were working with our partners to implement those things. Identify and secure opportunities for staff training, human resources, leadership, and overall transit operations training. I had really hoped this past year to increase the training opportunities that my staff and myself had. I think we did that to a degree, but I would like to go even further and make sure that everybody is set up. Especially we have some newer managers, so I want to make sure they're getting the appropriate training so that they feel comfortable in their management role. Initiate facility expansion and modifications to accommodate electrification in bigger vehicles. So I discussed that we had applied for the low no emissions grant, which is the $7 million grant, or the grant funding itself was $6 million. The total project is around $7 million with our match included. Obviously a big project, and in order to be ready for those electric vehicles, there's a lot of modification and training we need to do with our staff, but also modifying our facility to be able to accommodate it.
Is there enough room here to do that?
So that's one of the big questions.
Oh, okay.
And part of that grant, if awarded, is to pay for a consultant to help us understand if it is big
Feasibility
enough.
study.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then what is needed to make it, to do it.
Yeah.
One thing that I've been playing around with, just since we kind of are discussing it, there is a parcel out there that I just learned is going to be going for sale. And that might be an opportunity.
Just out here?
Mhm.
Okay.
To look at purchasing that, if we can make our park and ride down at the bottom, bus storage. So, and I've also been in contact with other partners like the Port of Hood River and the city to discuss what other options there may be if we cannot make this big enough for us. So, but I really, before we make that decision, I want to make sure that we have a consultant come in and tell us what we can and cannot do, and then go from there. Okay. Implementation of van pooling and other transportation options. Another grant, this one we haven't yet applied for, but are intending to, is for e-bike lending and essentially car sharing and some other transportation options that have been identified in the transit master plan. This is kind of a prime opportunity to grab some funding that would be available for that. And that is reflected in the budget. Begin implementation of the Intelligent Information Systems project, which includes improved dispatching software, real-time technology, automated passenger counters, and improved fare technology. These are grant-funded investments which will improve rider experience and staff ability to analyze and track ridership. Again, this is one that we applied for, and I have not yet heard that it's been awarded, but I hear that it's likely. Expand outreach to vulnerable communities. This is a goal of ours every year, and we're continuing to do better and work on improving that. And then also explore innovative options of, again, this is something that's kind of been on the budget message for on a yearly basis. But working with NEMT providers and how we continue to help support folks who utilize NEMT. So for the fiscal year 2024 proposed budget, I did mix things up a bit in the format. So I'm hoping this helps and assists you with reading the budget. If there are things that are confusing, I would love to know so that we can work for future years to make sure we can make it as clear cut as possible. But basically, we've been working with our new outside consultant to make sure that it is very kind of clear, but also matches up with all the different Oregon Department of Revenue forms and documentation, so that everything just kind of aligns. So resources, the general budget consists of resources from federal grants, state payroll tax collection, property tax revenues, and a variety of other smaller sources. We will be carrying over about 600,000 in capital grant funds from fiscal year 23. And then we've allocated an additional 600,000 in 5311 formula funds for large vehicles for the Columbia Gorge Express. We also are carrying over some funds from our STIF formula funds, and those are to be used for ADA improvements that are adjacent to bus stops. So those have been moved over as well. You will see that on the budget, and I'll show it to you as we kind of go specifically down the line. And then we've kind of broken up the requirements into administrative requirements and operating requirements. The line items, what's included in those line items has not changed. We simply changed the titles to be more in line with what is used in the official documents that we have to provide to the Department of Revenue. Okay. So in summary, I'm very excited to share this with you. There are a lot of balls kind of in the air because we haven't heard necessarily for sure about a lot of different funds. But that happens every biennium. We did, when I applied for these different funds, I tried to be as conservative as possible in the sense of with the economic situation, what the costs are going to be, it's not following the trends historically. So I've tried to shoot for as high as I felt comfortable with for asking from those grants to make sure that if salaries need to increase dramatically, or if we have issues with parts or buses, that we can accommodate that within those grant funds.
Couple of things.
Mhm.
Budget has to be in by the 1st of June.
No,
All of that, right?
it has to be adopted by, so we'll adopt it at the June 16th,
Okay,
and it has to be submitted to the county by, I believe, July 15th.
okay. Doesn't it have to go to ODOT?
It goes to them as well, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then with what is the ETA on any grant funds that are outstanding or?
So we should know, like the main ones that we're getting from ODOT, we should know in the next week or so.
Okay,
So by our next committee meeting, I should have that information dialed down. The other stuff, it's probably gonna be closer to mid-June, unfortunately. Because we're waiting on so to be specific, the grant funds that we're waiting to hear back on are the STIF discretionary funds. So that's the Intelligent Information Systems grant, where we're gonna be updating our technology. And continue to work on some projects to update the technology. And then the Columbia Gorge Express STIF statewide transit network grant. And then that's those ones. And then there's the NOLO grant. And then there's the we haven't applied for it yet, but we will be waiting for the carbon reduction program one. And then there's also, oh my gosh, the Washington Consolidated Grants, which would pay for next year's Dog Mountain and this year's the White Salmon summer weekend service. Those seem to kind of be up in the air of whether or not those will actually be funded. But again, the recommendation was to include them, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Amy, would you want me to move to review of the budget, the proposed budget?
Yes, let's
we
go ahead
can-
and do that.
Can I
Okay.
ask a question?
Yeah,
Chair? Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Oh, okay. One of your board goals is to expand outreach to vulnerable communities, and you
Yeah.
said that was a highlight. And then you had an increase by 40% this year. Do you know, can you allocate how much that had gone to those types of communities? Or people and,
you mean how the ridership can be,
yeah.
Yeah. I cannot,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Okay, and so do you have specific things you're doing in the budget for this year, just for those vulnerable communities?
Yes, so a lot of it is through our mobility manager travel trainer.
Okay.
So that's Sarah Crooks, and so manages our Gorge Transit Connect program, which is our low income
Oh, good.
pass program,
Okay,
where we work with local partners to either provide them passes at discounted rates, or if they're an organization that does not have access to transportation funds, we do have funds to help them get free passes. But we are now, in addition to that, working with them to help them advocate for transportation resources for their clients.
okay. And do you think there is some use to get to work
Yes,
with your bus? Oh, good.
yeah, I mean, I
Okay,
can
so
say,
there's things moving along.
yes, anecdotally, I ride the bus almost every day. I ride home from here to my house. And I see a large range of people using the buses. There's people you can tell that are on their way home
Mhm.
from work, and you can tell there's, grandmas with their kids. You can tell and I've talked to a couple of them. There are some that are transit dependent, but they're also transit choice users.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah. And you can also see on our ridership, we have, so not only is the Flamingo Gorge Express a really strong ridership service, with, throughout the year, there's strong ridership on there. The Hood River City route, the one now that it's 7 days a week,
Yeah.
we have seen very steady service
Oh, good.
during the week, and now weekend is kind of getting up to the same level. So it's really exciting to see, and I think what we're seeing folks who had other choices during the pandemic, and now we're coming out of the pandemic and they feel comfortable riding, and so they are.
Oh, good. That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Because we talked about it last year
Mhm.
extensively. Okay.
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
I think you also can see that and make that assumption by looking at the seasonal service trends,
Okay,
how they are really steadily going up.
Great.
Yeah.
It's doing what it needs to do.
Yeah, all right. Any questions or before we do go into the budget?
No, those are all good questions. I had meant to go into the budget just to answer these generic questions in the letter anyway, so it's all the same to me.
Okay.
I would also commend you. I think the readability of the message in letter was fantastic. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Great,
I even wrote good in all these when I was reading. Yeah. it was
Wonderful, I'm glad to
very
hear that.
readable.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Should we move to the
Okay.
budget?
Yeah, let's move to the budget, and what I'll do is I will go down the budget, the LB20 form, but then I'll also do the highlights that I've included in my budget message as well, and provide some additional information, but also if you have any questions, we can go through it in real time. All right, so for resources, so unallocated beginning fund balance. So this is a term that I changed from last year. it used to say unencumbered reserve funds. That had a tendency to confuse folks. So I did move it to unallocated beginning fund balance. And basically what that means is that's the cash that we have available to us at the beginning of the year. Now, this is somewhat an estimated number because it really has a lot of, again, there's moving pieces that get to that number. So we won't really know what that number is actually going to be until we go through the audit. And I estimated it really low, because I want to be conservative and I want us to feel good about all the different things that we are doing this year in the budget, and feel good with that number, and just be very cognizant of it. I don't want to estimate that number is going to be high and then all of a sudden it's much lower than we think it is, and then we have less in our contingency fund than what you all, the committee members, are comfortable with.
So on that one, I have a question about that. So we are going from, I'm just trying to coordinate the numbers in my mind. So we're going from a 1.2 or 1.23 unreserved fund to a planned beginning FY24 basically 1 million.
Yes, and
Okay.
again, I think some of this is, I'm estimating pretty low.
Okay.
But again, I'm doing that kind of in a strategic manner because I want you to feel good with what our end contingency is gonna be.
And then how does that, just to triangulate, how does that end? Where does that number align to the actual budget at the bottom? Is that the I guess I'm stuck on the 1.18 total non-allocated for FY22-23.
So what, that number has not been finalized yet. So again, it has the 1016 contingency.
Got it.
Again, that's based on what our kind of estimates was. Once that number is finalized through the audit, then it'll be included down here of what the ending fund balance was, along as well as the unallocated beginning fuel balance, fund
Got it.
balance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, so the reason why it's lower than it was last year are for several reasons, but mostly it's because we have had to pull some money from our reserve because of fuel and repair costs. And then we did take some for the transit master plan because there were changes on how we were funding that and how we were conducting it. So we had to use some reserve funds that the board approved. Did I say vehicle purchases? Yeah, okay. So vehicle purchases, transit master plan expenses, and then also fuel and repair costs. I do think we are going to be able to recoup some of that repair costs and fuel and those vehicle purchases actually as well through this last allotment of CARES. But because we literally just got it, I think yesterday, I haven't been able to really dig into it. So I did not put in our budget, but I do assume that I did put some in, but I think we will be applying for more than that. Does that make sense? So I think we're gonna be
Kind of.
okay. So basically, we are at a loss or a deficit
Right.
going into this next year because of our repair costs were, I believe, almost as twice as much as what we kind of assumed they were and what we had the grant funds available for. So we used CARE funds to mitigate a lot of that, but we did not assume it was going to be as high as it was. So there is still going to be a gap between what those grant funds and including the CARES funds is going to cover versus what we actually incurred. So there is one more CARES happening. I did assume, I think I put about 70,000, and I'll double check, of new CARES funding in to help mitigate that and what we would receive because of when we receive the reimbursement from the state. But I think we'll be able to apply and receive much more than that,
Okay, thank you.
but that is gonna be a moving target. And I will keep you guys in the loop. And actually, I should know more about what I will actually apply for by our last budget committee meeting. So if we need to adjust things, then we can. Okay, so STIF dedicated project funds. So $192,000 of our STIF project funds are in our safe little STIF bank. 92,000 of that are expected hopefully to be used this year, which means that we will keep another 100,000 in our pretty safe little STIF bank for future years.
Those are actual dollars in the bank?
Those are
or-
actual dollars in the bank that we have already received from ODOT.
Okay,
And because we did not get the opportunity to spend those funds in the previous biennium, we need to keep them safe. And this is one of the actual recommendations from ODOT, because of the issue from Sunset Empire, is to really make sure they're very safe and in separate funds.
okay.
So,
Yes. They're in a separate bank account?
we are working on it, yeah.
Okay.
When we do the new account, they will be in a separate account.
Okay,
For those of you who do not know, which should just be Cindy and Jeremy, we are looking for a new bank that allows us some additional features that our current bank does not have. Okay, so that brings us a total beginning fund balance of 1.2 million for just basically the cash that we have. For fair revenue, I did do a slight uptick. Again, I think that's being pretty conservative. For contract revenue, that'll go up to 104. That again, is an uptick, and that the reason for that is contracting with the U.S. Forest Service staff to pay for the Multnomah Falls permit program. So it's an increase of 40,000 over fiscal year 2023. So federal assistance, I have 1.6 million. That includes some of that is impacted by the change from accruals to modified cash accounting basis. And so Cindy and Jeremy, to kind of loop you in, this past year, we got knocked on our audit a bit because there were some accruals that were placed in the wrong spot. And the board decided to kind of remove accruals from the equation so that couldn't accidentally happen again.
Take it away so one can't have it.
Exactly.
That's always good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also allows me to really understand where my money is and that we have money, and not being like, oh, yes, we have this in the bank, and oh, wait, no, do we really? No, that was accrued, so that it makes things a lot cleaner. The con of it, though, of course, is that it's showing these huge gaps of when we get revenue, which with this type of business, that's just kind of how it goes, with the fact that we're so reliant on grants.
Yeah.
Okay, so federal assistance, so that'll be 5311, which funds, it's gonna be funding 2 vehicles for our Columbia Gorge Express. It also funds our DAR and our deviated fixed route. We are receiving a bunch more in 5311 funds than we have in previous bienniums. So for the biennium itself, we're receiving about $600,000 more than we have in previous years. Because we need bigger vehicles, I chose to use a big bunch of that for these Columbia Gorge Express vehicles. And then it also allows us to kind of understand in the next biennium how much funds we will really have from that source, because this year they made the decision. So the advisory committee that oversees those funds made the decision to kind of right size the organizations for those funds, because it wasn't accurately really reflecting what it should be. It was an outdated formula that did not take into account all of our ridership and miles driven. So there was a big bump, but because I was a little concerned of what that would really mean long-term, I decided to use a bulk of those funds for kind of a one-time purchase. But then the next biennium, the intent will be to use a large amount of those funds to help us implement the transit master plan service changes.
Because the two vehicles come from somewhere else.
Well, and I won't need, in theory, 2 more new vehicles in the next biennium,
Oh,
with these new electric vehicles that
okay,
should
I thought,
suffice our
okay,
need.
I thought you were not talking about the electric vehicles, you are. Got it,
Well, I wasn't. So for the 5311 funds, it is gas vehicles,
okay.
but we'll be receiving if for any replacement vehicles needed, for the,
This coming year,
the NOLO grant.
okay,
So we'll help meet that need.
okay, got it,
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah, so I don't foresee us needing new Columbia Gorge Express vehicles in 2 years. It'll be now and then hopefully between 5 and 10 years after that. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, so sorry, I lost track of where I was. Then the 6 million FTA low or no grant funds, which haven't received yet. If awarded, only a small amount would be used in fiscal year 2024, again, to hire the consultant to help us understand how to modify our building, or if it's not even a thing.
On that 6 million real quickly, it's a huge number. Are you,
Yeah.
did I miss, or did you mention the chance of success on all 6 million, or what are you planning for that?
So for fiscal year 24, I'm just planning on the 45,000. Again, when I've asked ODOT, they're kind of, it's really unknown as to what the likelihood is us to being awarded that, because it's done through FTA, and they have kind of a different process than ODOT is. They don't have as good of a temperature check. They think we probably have a fairly good chance because we are rural. And there was funds specifically allocated to rural entities.
Good chance at the 40 or a good chance at the 6 million?
The 6
Oh,
million.
good, I was just about to say that too.
Yeah.
Wow,
Wow. I mean, like,
I know, that's amazing.
Yeah.
like that just blows up the whole conversation, doesn't it?
Yes.
I mean, not with consideration of
Said
land prices in
quietly.
Hood River and
Not gonna
construction
lie,
costs, and
it's scary, but in a good
Yeah,
way.
Okay.
You should be
You're all
scared.
Sitting here and I'm just like going.
I'm
Yeah.
scared for you, Amy.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks. Yeah, so it's, if we are awarded that, that's why I really want to have someone who knows electrification, who knows transit facilities and how to modify them appropriately to help direct us in the right way, and then help guide us to make sure that we have all the electrification and infrastructure that we need in order to receive those electric buses that we're applying
Yeah.
for. And make sure we are set up for success.
Okay,
So like I kind of said a little bit earlier, this next year, it's that stepping stone,
that's, you know,
It's-
sounds like if this happens, this can happen and then
Yeah.
stuff like that.
but it's also creating a really solid foundation
Okay,
and making sure my team has all the resources they need for us to move forward and to build a very firm pyramid.
pyramid.
Yes.
With lots of service.
Yes,
Good.
okay.
Mhm.
All right, any questions on that federal assistance? Besides that, it's a lot of money.
In parentheses, 6
I'm cheering
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. Okay. State assistance. So again, this line item is does reflect some it is impacted a bit from the accounting basis from accrual to modified, mostly because we're not going to be receiving our funds from Q4 until fiscal year 24, which is going to be less than what we would normally receive. Because that grant was higher than our previous ones. Our previous biennium, because I built in a lot, or I built in more room for the increased expenses that we're seeing. And then, of course, there's the, if this is dependent on if we're awarded that discretionary funds for the Intelligent Information Systems project, and that's expected to, hold on, how much did I put in on that one? I put $66,000 of us receiving, so that would be about $70,000 of expense, and that would be primarily in capital. And then 180,000 was included for the carbon reduction program. Again, that would be van pooling and the transportation. I'm sorry, van pooling is not part of the carbon reduction program. That's actually part of our STIF project funds. But the carbon reduction program is complementary with that because it's under kind of the same umbrella of providing mobility options. Okay, any questions on state assistance? Daryl, you are so quiet, it's making me nervous. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Daryl.
Sorry, there's been so much noise going on around me. I muted a long time ago. I do have a question when we get to it about the e-bike lending money.
Yeah. And that is not something that I've brought to your table yet. You will see it at next board meetings, the next board meeting. So again, if that's something that you guys don't feel comfortable, then that's something we can adjust and you'll be getting more information on it. I just did include it so that it was represented here.
Well, in the breakdown of the, well, do you want to talk about the match grant
Here,
funds now or when we get to that?
Let's do it when we get to that. That way we
Okay.
don't, we kind of go in the format that we see here.
Okay.
Oh, and then property tax, that's pretty simple. It's more or less going to be about the same. And then other revenue, that does change a bit. Based on recommendations from our accounting consultant. She does suggest that we put our cash that we have on hand in an LGIP account, which is basically an interest account. So we would get interest from it. So she said about, well, I said about 30,000 being very conservative. She thinks we could probably get more than that if we put our funds in there as quickly as possible, which is something that the board members are going to be discussing at next week's board meeting. All right. And then the additional 10 was just kind of the interest on, oh, sorry, it's the sale of buses that we're expecting. Okay, administrative materials and services. So our building expenses, I am keeping fairly minimal, with the hope that we're not going to see much large increases, because I want to save as much cash as we can for when we do the modification.
The higher number last year was due to, or the current year was due to, you guys did some remodeling, is that correct?
So that was the intent. We actually ended up not doing that. We had to do some repairs. There was a couple there was a flood and some other things that we had to do, but we did actually end up not spending the majority of those funds because again, I started to see this opportunity and I wanted to use as much grant funds for that modification and potential remodeling of the office as possible.
Cool.
All right, and then professional fees, that is less than last year, and that being because the transit master plan has finished. But I did keep room in there for our new accountant. She is more expensive. But she's showing her weight in gold, so,
Good.
that is at 110,000, and then it also includes some funds for the consultant, again, to work on the modification of the facility. And then administrative expenses is just all those little kind of nooks and crannies of different things. Hold on, I'm sorry, yeah. Yeah, what again are some of those? I'm trying to see
The administrative expenses,
yeah,
so those are things like our office supplies, the printing.
Yeah.
Copying, postage, items like
all
that.
those little simple things.
Yeah.
That add up. Okay, so then any questions on administrative materials and services? Okay, administrative personnel services. So it was at 239,000, which is a little bit more than last year. However, the thing to know, so we, reason why it's a little bit higher and some of the benefits is actually less is because the administrative personnel, two of them, take part in the health stipend, which gets paid out as a wage rather than a benefit. So our employees have the opportunity, if they have health coverage through a spouse or some other fashion, they can elect to get a health stipend, which is 70% of what we pay for the cost.
That's nice.
And then
That's
they
really
can,
nice.
yeah, it is great. So it does kind of create those some caveats when you're looking at the budget here, because that will come out of wages instead of benefits. And then the other thing to know, I did. So I'm trying to create structure in a lot of our different policies and to make it fairly clear and understandable as to when people get increases and what those could potentially do. In the past, we've kind of had ranges for, or not kind of, we did have ranges for the different jobs, specifically for the office staff. The drivers are they're a little more formalized through the union contract. But we had ranges, and then I would look at what the market rate was for the different positions every time we would be hiring, or if we were looking at merit increases, that's how we would go about it. I would like to have more structure. So I did work with looking at other similar agencies of what their step increases look like. So in the exhibit, I did include a draft salary scale, which has all the staff positions with a step. Basically, they would start at step 1. After a probationary period, they would go to step 2. And then after that, it would be on a yearly basis if they had a positive performance evaluation, and if it was the recommendation of the manager. So that's also something that I'm looking for your guidance on, as that is appropriate or not.
So on that,
Mhm.
are you saying that step 1 and 2 could be combined into a single year and then it goes by year? Or is it everybody's right now currently at step 1 and then every year, so you're creating a path forward by year?
So it's based on, so step 1 is if everybody did start their, so it would be what everybody would start their position at. So for example, myself, so that step 1 is when I was selected to be executive director. And then after my probationary period, I went to the 91,520, which is what I'm putting as step 2. And then if approved in July, I would go to that step 3.
Great. And so it's 6 months probationary period.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and
That's
it's,
one
and
year.
sometimes it depends on the offer letter, what is
Okay.
in there, but yeah, so,
Generally.
yeah.
Okay, I understand.
And then step 3 to step 4 would be a full fiscal year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then do you have, I guess my question is, do you have those wages built into the,
I do.
The budget, okay.
I do.
I'm sure you said that already and I missed it, so.
Oh, no, actually, I don't think I did, but that's a very good question to clarify.
So we're, so the budget reflects step 3.
Well, it depends on the
Okay.
employee, so it does,
It's a mix.
it is a mix, because we have, so I believe myself and Tia are at step 3. Transit operations manager, I believe is step 2. But again, I'm going off of my memory, so.
But it's just, yeah.
It is included, I included it in my formula, or yeah, my formulas for the wages. And I can, if you'd like, for the next one, I can be more clear at the next committee
I
to
got it.
show where you are, or where we are, and what those definitions are. That's also something I'm bringing to the board to have them approve, so that it's a very clear policy again, but I wanted to show you all the salary scale, so you could either give feedback or
I think it makes a lot of sense. I love your idea of you could just almost in bold what step each one of these people are at, and then maybe do a timeline as to when. So, you know, just simply like
yeah,
fiscal year 25 would be step 4 or whatever it is.
yeah.
Cool.
But it will be different for every employee.
Just for the office staff. So what we
Right.
could do is, what he's suggesting is I can just bold the ones where they are, so that it's
Okay.
clear as to
Got
where
it.
we
Okay.
currently are.
So the drivers, all the operations, are they also under the union with the drivers?
Yeah, so the drivers are all under the under the operations personnel. And so that one is, I am working on some potential updates
Okay.
to pay time off policy, and that would actually be
Oh, I see.
applicable to the office staff as well. But I'm trying to improve retention, as well as ensure some of our policies are very clearly stated, as there has been some problems in the past where they were not, and there was confusion between management and drivers. So I'm trying to really clear that up.
But you don't have the wages for drivers on this.
I don't, because they're in the union contract, and it's all completely handled in the union, and it's all set for this year.
Okay, but you have mechanics and others besides drivers that work on the bus. Are they also under that union contract?
No, they are not, because we use a contractor for our mechanic services. And he is, all of his, or their, I should say, their expenses are all under the operations expenses.
Okay,
Okay, so yeah, so there's gonna be a couple of changes,
Oh, I see.
and I did wanna, and I let kind of Daryl and Tamara know this a little bit. The board is gonna be going in an executive session next week to discuss a couple of changes, and that might potentially increase the cost for salary and wages. I did not necessarily reflect that in these numbers, because I didn't have all the information quite yet. So one thing is that we can just, I want you to be aware of it. You don't necessarily have to say, Amy, increase that. I can always bring it back to you after the board meeting has had their meeting and a decision has been made, so I can give you more concrete numbers. But I did want you to make sure you're aware that if the board decides to go a certain direction, I would suggest that them increasing the personnel, both of them combined about, I think it was like $25,000.
Okay, would be as it.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Any questions on that? All right, and I'm sorry, I do realize that we are at 6 o'clock, which is when we originally had, where is my,
Agenda.
on our agenda. we can, yes, we can either continue a bit to go over just the basics, or we can put a stop in this discussion and we can come back to it in 2 weeks, when our next meeting is scheduled. If you feel comfortable, just if you want to continue going through this, there may be the possibility of, we have the option of canceling that second meeting, but we would still have to have the third meeting, which I believe is on, do you know off the top of your head?
I don't.
My vote would be to expedite the rest of the conversation and have it now with the opportunity to cancel the next. That's just one person's opinion.
I agree.
Okay, so to continue discussing today, okay, Daryl and Laura, would you be in that same vote?
I'm okay with that.
Okay,
Daryl's talking.
I'll be more Daryl and less Jeremy.
I'm okay with it, but it sounds to me like there's gonna be a lot of changes to this budget. Maybe in 2 weeks, we might have a lot more information that we may want to go over before we have a final meeting. My thought is maybe we should just have another meeting in 2 weeks when we have this other information, but it's up to you guys.
so I do think that probably the majority of the changes, it's gonna be that 25,000. If the board decides to approve, I don't think there's gonna
Okay,
be
well,
any
if
other
that's all we're
changes.
talking about, then let's go ahead and finish up tonight then.
Okay. Because everything else I did build a buffer in and I did make sure it was reflected. Okay, so then on to operating materials and services. And Jeff, I do know that you had something that you need to do, so if you do need to,
No, just I'll wait for Hannah to text me, then I'll.
Okay.
I'll go.
sounds good.
Thanks.
Operating materials and services, so the vehicle expenses stayed about the same. Fuel did increase a bit, again, because it's just so volatile and we have no idea really what it's going to do. Operation expenses, I did put that a little higher. Again, that's making some guesses on buses. We did receive 3 new buses, but we do need more new buses, and we need the bigger Columbia Gorge Express buses, because those are where we're seeing a large amount of our operational costs.
They're breaking down.
They're breaking down.
Okay.
Well, we're safe for running them in a safe manner, but their
Yeah,
repair costs are
but
expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you said that in your explanation.
Yeah. Okay, so communication expenses, that has increased due to us utilizing a new dispatch software. While more expensive, I'm really excited about it. I think there's a lot of potential opportunity there. And it also it helps us with the intelligent information systems.
In
Grant.
last year's budget, we spent a lot of time talking about that.
We did.
And that's why it's nice to see it here.
Yeah.
And more money. Yeah, something happened that we talked about.
Yeah, and we did use a small portion of that. However, I did push off some of those expenses too, because again, I learned that we had a grant that could potentially be paying for some of that, so I'd rather have the grant pay for that. And save our match funds. Okay, so then vehicle insurance, that did go up because of the amount of vehicles that we have. Driver expenses, that did go down a tad because of mostly uniforms and some other expenses that were not needed as much. The advertising and marketing, I did reduce that quite a bit. Again, some of our advertising and marketing expenses from last year, that was due to the transit master plan. Without that, I'm seeing a lot less, but also with the Gorge Pass program that we are helping to fund with other providers, I've seen such a great return on that. It wasn't necessary to do our own marketing. And I think the marketing that the Emily from the Columbia Gorge Tourism Alliance, who is the consultant, was selected to head that charge, has done just such a phenomenal job. And it's really been great to see it. So that is why that is low. Grant and contract match funds. I know that's all a topic that we wanted to discuss and why it's so much. So the answer to that question is, it is so much, one, because of the Multnomah Fall Transit Ambassadors, that this is the first year that we're getting funds from the Forest Service. So that's a bunch of funds through that system. The mobility manager, that we will then pay out, of course, to a contractor. So the mobility manager, that's Kathy Fitzpatrick from McKed. She does a wonderful job of ensuring there's transportation options for Hood River and the Dalles, and working with our different partners and all those different things. Also the e-bike lending and subsidy and car sharing grant. So that's the carbon reduction. That's, again, is assuming that we're awarded those funds.
Okay,
And then-
that's
Yes.
where I have a question.
Okay, let's
So
talk.
our matching funds on that are $200,000?
No. Our matching funds should be 20,000, but the
Okay, I thought
estimated,
the thing. I thought this breakdown that you sent me showed 200,000 for that. Did I read it wrong?
no.
Okay.
So that is the so that's our expenses. So that's just the breakdown of what is included in that expense. So we're estimating there's gonna be about 200 grand of an expense, but 180 of that we have grant funds to cover.
Okay.
And then
That's
20 of that would be matched, but I've been told, and I'm working with the city on this, but they might be interested on splitting that half with us.
okay, great.
Yes, so that's the intent. And then the Gorge Pass partner distributions, of course, so we're the kind of we're the financial hub of the Gorge Pass. And TF, you need to go to.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Sorry, now I lost my track. Gorge Pass partner distribution. So we are the ones that we take in all the funds from the sale, and then we distribute it to the partner based on the contract that we have with those different partners. So that is the payout there. Outreach consultant. So I mentioned her earlier, but Sarah Crook, who is the mobility manager, travel trainer. She has done an amazing job of working with local partners and doing outreach into the community. This year, so the past 2 years, McKed had received a grant to pay for her services, and then we paid half of the match. This year, both McKed and ourselves will be paying half of her salary. And we have the ability to use some stiff formula funds. And we have some 5310 mobility management funds to help mitigate that cost.
Was she at the Saturday market?
Yes, she was.
Very good person.
Yes, she's fabulous.
Yeah.
All right, and then van pool, that's 20,000. That's funds that we have from our stiff project funds. So we have $20,000 allocated in the stiff plan, and then that would go to the van pool program. We're working with setting up a contract with a third party who is going to help manage that. And this 20,000 would cover 2 van pools per year, like a subsidy for the 2 van pools, and then plus their management fee. All right, any questions on those remainder of those items?
Real quickly, I think you covered it, but I forgot. Cindy, I think, talked about this. We did talk last year about the ridership tally system. There was more, it was manual, but then now do we actually use funds to update that, or did we not?
So we used some, and that's going towards, it was in our communication expense, there is
Got it.
an increase for that. But, we're able to use some grant funds for some continuation of that implementation. So that's awesome.
Oh, good. And it's
Thank you.
helped.
Yeah, well, so far, we're still getting it up and running. Because we just got access to it a couple months ago.
Oh, okay.
But so we're still getting up and running, but I have high hopes for it.
Good.
Okay, on to operating personnel services. So operations wages, again, that my recommendation might be to create a little bit of a buffer on there and to increase that by just a tad, depending on the board discussions.
So that's where the 25,000 might come in. Is that
It would be probably 60-40 between the operations wages and the personnel, the administrative wages.
Administrative, yeah.
okay.
Actually, probably more 80-20.
So I have a question here. How come the employer tax goes up so much when the wages actually went down? Is there more taxes this coming year?
So there is some more taxes with the paid leave organ. We are also, we were pretty high on our estimate for the operational wages, so we did bring that down a bit. But yeah, we did increase the employer tax, so it's about 16%.
And that's from that paid leave.
Well, they're paid leave, but then also just the other taxes in
Right.
general.
And the benefits went up despite the wages going down?
Yes, they did. Medical benefits are incredibly expensive for us.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And
Any-
I'm
yeah.
just curious why, no PTO.
So that goes back to us choosing to go from accrual to modified cash.
Gotcha. Okay.
So since we're not accruing for it, it's not in there.
All right.
What does that stand for?
PTO, paid time off.
Okay, not parent teacher.
No.
That's all I got. Okay, I got it.
And then capital outlay. So that is for the buses and some of the improved information tech or systems grant. And also for the e-bike lending, that grant as well.
So
And then
on that one, so real quickly on that one, you have 1.5, but to spend what you plan to spend 1.5, but you don't, you have not accounted for the income that could come from the 6 million. Is that correct?
Correct.
Or those two
Because
different? Okay.
it's two different grants. So there's the income from the other grants.
Yep.
That is reflected in federal and state assistance.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, federal
And
and
both of
state
them, yeah.
assistance. And so our match, so for all of that capital outlay, our match is, I didn't put it down here.
Well, I guess my question is we have a chance to get $6 million to buy
Here it
electric
is.
buses. And this is the 1.5, the electric buses cash outlay?
No, so that
Or these
6
different
million,
subjects?
so that 6 million is going to be reflected in fiscal year 25 for the vehicles.
Got it.
For fiscal year 24, it's simply gonna be a consultant.
Right,
He's
Got
going to think about it till 2025.
Yeah.
and you put a consultant in there, in here. a little bit
Yes, and the
higher up.
professional
Okay,
fees.
Under professional, got it.
Yeah.
So that's where the 6 million sits right now, in
Yeah.
our brains.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that capital outlay, so that's for one electric van that we were supposed to get this past year that we have not. for 2 electric cutaways, again, that we were supposed to
Is that the
receive.
supply issue you talked about? in
Yes.
here?
And then 2 Columbia Gorge Express vehicles that the funding is not available until July 1st.
So the 6 million in this are 2 different subject matters altogether.
I would think about it in 2 different subject matters. There's 45,000 of that 6 million that you should think about. But really, the 6 million is gonna be for the next fiscal year.
So you have electric buses coming, but we have potential to buy a lot more electric buses potentially.
So, yes.
Perfect.
All right. And then, so I tallied it out. Sorry, I thought I put it down. But so our match, I believe, is about, I want to say it's 153 for all the capital. So our going down into the contingency, the reason why I wanted to point it out is because of the vehicles and that capital. If we did not have that, we would not be going down into our contingency. And I think we would have about a 30,000 buffer. So I wanted to make sure you were all aware of that. But then our contingency, so that's the funds that if we need to, we can dip into that. And then there's 100,000 of restricted stiff funds, so we cannot use that. And then also there's reserve for future use. So again, we cannot use those funds unless I go through a supplemental budget.
Okay, those 2.
Yeah.
But the contingency is wide open.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And that is per recommendation from our consultant, again, from the learnings from Sunset Empire. But to make sure, so that's about, I believe 4 months that we could operate on if we absolutely needed to.
And I tattle on myself, the Sunset Empire Transportation District, I'm not sure you're aware of that, but I was involved with them a couple of years ago. I was on their board. But they just had to shut down because they ran out of funding.
Ooh, where are they located?
Out in Astoria is they're at Clatsop County.
Never heard of it.
So, yeah, that's, I'm learning as much as I can because I still have friends on the budget, or that are on the board. And it was a shock to me, so I kind of ask a lot of questions sometimes. But it's a big learning curve for everybody in the state
Mhm.
on how they did their budgets and
Oh,
what we can learn to do better.
And one of those are being super conservative with our cash balance or beginning cash balance. And making sure that there's reserved for future use, $600,000. So
okay.
that if we, for some weird, crazy reason, we had to dip into it,
Yeah,
I'd have to go do a supplemental budget.
a supplemental budget, but that was.
Yeah.
So-
Come on.
So it can happen and it has happened close to home essentially.
Correct. We've, I think we've had a really great board, who has been very, cognizant of our funds and, you know, my predecessor has did a lot of work in making sure that our budget, we had a nice reserve funds.
Yeah.
But I think for me, this was just a, whoa, you know, there's, so I want to make sure that I am covering the district in everywhere that I can. And again, to make sure there's lots of clarity on our budget so that you, the budget committee members and the board members feel comfortable. And I really appreciate all the questions that you ask because that, you know, that helps me feel good about all of this. So
It appears very transparent
great,
for somebody
we go.
walking through the door and not being on the board.
great. I am glad to hear that.
So,
Okay.
so real quickly, just so I understand the math, and I apologize, and dive back in the detail here. So on the, if I look at the budget, the actual line items, you have a little 1.016 contingency. You could use some of that, but if you don't, that's going to be to the benefit of the 1.18. Is that how that works?
So if you add the line item 59, 60, and 61 together, that should be our
Oh, got it.
next year's unallocated beginning fund balance.
Got it. Okay. Sorry. Yes, I realize that
And-
now.
And actually specifically 59 and 61, if you add those together, that should be our next year's end balance. But that contingency is just so crazy repairs need to happen and we don't have the funds for it, we can use that contingency.
You can't read the numbers, they're so little.
I'm so sorry. Is there one I can read for you?
I just, where is the 59, 60, 61? Can you? just-
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just circle it for me.
Okay, and you.
So that's
have it-
essentially our rolling.
have it.
I did
contingency
circle it
fund.
correctly? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I thought
So-
you were saying something different
Okay,
again now.
yeah,
Okay.
no,
So-
you-
Yeah, that's essentially our
Not available without a
unallocated
supplement. Okay.
Yep.
cash balance. All right,
Yeah, I got it.
any other questions, areas of concerns,
Mhm.
things that you would like me to look into for the next budget committee meeting? Besides the working with the board and getting clarity on those couple of items that we're waiting on.
Is the master plan update from 2023, is that on your website now?
It is.
Okay.
You can
I
also
just
go to
wanted
engagecatbus.org. And the board will actually be doing their second public hearing. So if you have any public comments.
I just want to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just so you know, so there's gonna be an executive summary and then there's also the full plan. So the executive summary will give you all the,
Okay.
great.
Thank you.
Is there a separate area for board expenses?
Yes, that goes underneath. I believe that's the administrative, I think it's in the administrative expenses.
Yes.
Okay,
And specifically the other administrative expenses.
other,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Alright.
that's in that 12,700.
Okay.
Yes.
Here we go.
And I'm just curious on what is in there,
Mhm.
if you,
So
you know, what.
For the board specifically?
yeah.
So there's the stipend, there's the emails accounts,
Which you brought up, you're
Um,
changing,
which is changing and hopefully everything went well. Hopefully everybody got an email today reminding them of today. Okay, great. And it's basically that's saving us about $30 a month.
okay,
So there should be some actually savings in there. And then also in the other administrative expenses, so there's the driver meetings. And training, holiday party, so we did bump the holiday party up a bit. As well as employee, there's an employee spirit week. Which we did bump up a bit because it did seem needed for morale.
Oh, good.
But also I think the holiday party, I mean, we did it this year on, I think, $150.
Oh.
And so we did a lot, like, I think it was like maybe even $2,000. So that we can actually go somewhere and eat some food
Yeah.
that's not produced by the staff. Cause that, even
I
though
remember
it's,
those so well, the
Yeah.
city.
yeah, even though it's nice, I think what we reflected on is that's not really an employee appreciation event, right? Cause you're then asking an employee on their day off, most likely, to be
Potato
cook and
salad or something,
yeah,
yeah.
and it, it adds some
Yeah.
additional stresses. So again, it's not anything that we'll go crazy on. But we did want to allot some more funds so that we could do something and actually treat our employees.
Yeah, yeah. And
and
you're supporting a local business.
Exactly.
Yes. one of the things that I wanted to bring up because. Living on the coast and they had SDOA right on the seaside,
Mhm.
it was very easy for all board members to attend that.
Yes.
It's a great learning experience. And I am going to suggest that even if the chair,
Mhm.
and or vice chair and the treasurer somehow, have that connection and be involved with that type of training.
Mhm.
So there is a great resource.
Yes, and there
And
are,
I just, that's why I'm asking that question, seeing that,
so that is not in there specifically in the board. We do have some room in conferences that we could use for that.
okay,
But there's also a lot of good like online resources. but-
right, right,
But yes, I definitely agree with
Because
you. I
that's-
think the board chair, or the treasurer should, maybe
Yeah.
we do a rotating. And like this year I went to the SEO conference and maybe next year it's the board or the secretary or the vice chair.
yeah, I just. I know that I received a lot of valuable information,
Yeah.
but it was much easier because it was 20 miles down the road,
Yeah.
no motel, all of that. But I also know that they have contacts, they know who to call. And, you know, there is legal, and even how you found the
Accountant.
accountant and
Mhm.
everything, but there's that, so
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put that out there.
Yeah, and I think we
So-
can maybe look at maybe putting a little more buffer in the conferences so that
Right.
that's possible.
Yeah,
Um,
and I also am going to say that I do think the director should always go. Because there's great ideas that are shared that you can bring back to your operation.
Yeah.
And that's one of the only ways that you can do that.
Yeah, and
So-
I did this past conference, it proved
Right.
very informational and to the maybe chagrin of some of my employees of getting texts every 5 minutes of, guys, I learned this,
Yeah.
guys, did you know
Yeah.
about this, guys?
Why don't we
Yeah.
do this?
Yes.
Exactly. I will say, so in the conferences, I did also leave room. So I will be attending the ACT, so it's the Association of Commuter Transportation conference in Seattle, that's in July. But if we pay for it, this will come out of this current year. But also for next year, there's the Transportation Research Board conference that is in DC, which I have my eye on. I do have family there, so that can reduce expenses. But then also there's another conference that could be very informative in South Carolina, but that's one that I can also get a scholarship for. So there's some different opportunities that we can go forward. But I think, but there's a couple of kind of key ones that are definitely on my radar that I'd like
Okay.
to go to.
My next meeting today is 6:30.
All right,
Okay.
well,
Running from place to place.
Okay,
you gotta go. Thank you so much, and I appreciate it. And what I'll do is I'll update everyone, and unless there's any crazy changes, I'll just assume that we're canceling the second budget committee meeting. Does that sound all right? Does that sound what we all feel good
Yeah,
about it?
that sounds great.
And then we will, of course, we have to have that third meeting because that's when we have public comment and when the committee needs to.
Sends the recommendation to the
Okay,
board.
awesome. All right, Jeremy, if you could do that last little piece and ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. And
Yeah, can I get a
then
motion
give us
to adjourn
time.
the meeting?
Sure.
so move.
So moved. I'll second it if you have it.
All right, so Tamara's first and Cindy was second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, approved.
Okay,
All
Thanks,
right, and
everyone.
that's at 6:27. Thank you so much for staying an extra half hour. I will remember this for next year and
Okay.
budget for a half an hour.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Laura.
Appreciate it.
Bye, Daryl.
okay.
Thank you guys for staying later. I'm sorry it was later.
All right.
Good. Take it up. Take it up behind.